Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Group Photo Grave by Joanna Campbell Slan, narrated by Amy Mcfadden. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 10, King James Version of the Bible. 1. In Memoriam, a special edition of the Time in a Bottle newsletter. As many of you know, this month we said our final goodbye to Dodie Goldfodder, the founder and former owner of our store, Time in a Bottle. The cancer that Dodie had fought so long and valiantly finally won the fight for her body. But even her passing cannot rob us of her memory. Dodie has been and will continue to be a blessing to all of us who think of Time in a Bottle as a second home. Dodie is survived by her husband, Horace, and her daughter, Rebecca. She was preceded in death by her son, Nathan. In keeping with her wishes, immediately after her death there was a brief graveside ceremony for family members only. We invite you to stop by Time in a Bottle and create a page with your memories of Dodie. At some point, we'll collect all these, put them in an album, and give them to her family. Thanks for the memories, Dodie. Kiki Lowenstein. 2. Saturday, 2nd week of June, Webster Groves, Missouri. My mother-in-law Sheila's wedding wasn't totally ruined by the discovery of a corpse in the punch bowl. Okay, I lie. The corpse wasn't exactly inside the punch bowl. The body had simply hit the punch bowl on its way down to the ground. One of the wait staff was walking through the catering tent and found the limp figure sprawled on the grass with a punch bowl over its head. Except for the corpse, every other part of Sheila Lowenstein and St. Louis Police Chief Robbie Holmes's ceremony had been lovely. Joyful, too. And I badly needed a spot of cheer after the death of my friend and mentor, Dodie Goldfodder. Sheila had beamed with happiness as she and Robbie Holmes had said their wedding vows. The day was beastly hot, but the sun was bright in a cornflower blue sky, and a light breeze carried the scent of roses. All in all, a wonderful, pre-dead guy, omen for the new couple. Sheila's attention to detail had paid off handsomely. The dresses of the bridesmaids were a lovely visual counterpoint to the vibrant pinks, deep reds, rich magentas, and royal purples of the garden owned by my landlord, Leighton Haversham. My 13-year-old daughter, Anya, and I were Sheila's maid and matron of honor, respectively, so we wore dresses in shades of soft pink with navy trim. Mine had been altered repeatedly to fix my expanding waistline. Right now, I'm 6 weeks pregnant with my second child. Everything they say about second pregnancies seems to be true, especially when it comes to how much faster you show the second time around. The rest of the bridesmaids, Sheila's best friends, a group that went by the nickname of the Jimmy Girls, wore plum-colored silk. Esther Frommer from Los Angeles, Toby Perlman from Palm Beach, and Leah Ginsberg from Chicago had pinned narrow navy ribbons to their chests in remembrance of a fourth friend, Miriam, who had recently died. Sheila had a ribbon too, but hers was more discreetly tucked into her bouquet so as not to ruin the lines of her dress. The quintet had been best friends since their years at the Charles and Anne Lindbergh Academy, known locally as CALA, the same school my daughter attends. On the groom's side, we had Sheila's new husband and his best man, Detective Chad Detweiler, the father of the child in my belly. Detweiler and I were planning to get married, although we hadn't set a date, due to a variety of complications. To elope or not to elope, that was the question. There were pros and cons on both sides of the decision. Over and over in my head, I repeated my mantra, "Love will find a way." The words might seem trivial in the face of our obstacles, but I believed them with all my heart. Already, Detweiler and I had been through so much. The drama surrounding us wasn't surprising when you considered the fact we'd met because my husband, George Lowenstein, Sheila's son, had been murdered. As Dodie used to say, man plans and God laughs. Right now, the good Lord must be rolling on the floor and clutching his sides with hilarity. Unplanned could be the one-word theme for my entire life. Both of my pregnancies had been unplanned. Anya had been the result of my drinking too much purple passion at a frat party, and this one was what Detweiler called equipment failure. But unplanned did not mean unloved or unwanted. Anya was the light of my life, and I had no doubt that this baby would be just as precious. With a sigh, I brought myself back to the here and now, lest I allow my daydreaming to rob me of this beautiful moment. Rounding out the groom's attendants were Detweiler's partner, Detective Stan Hodcho, Lieutenant Milton Lesher, Sergeant Donald Tomatillo, and Captain Prescott Galloway. Prescott was a nebbish, a Yiddish term loosely translated as an ineffectual person who nobody liked. But, as I understood it, Prescott and Robbie were somehow related. The man was also Robbie's second-in-command at the police station, so an invitation had been mandatory. Sheila didn't like Prescott, but she wasn't in a position to complain, partially because Robbie's side of the invitation list was embarrassingly short. It seemed that his kids had decided not to attend their father's second wedding. Since Robbie's first wife, Nadine, had died 10 years ago, I found their behavior puzzling, to say the least. I mean, come on. At 59, didn't the man deserve another chance at happiness? With or without his adult children's blessings, Robbie Holmes was a happy man. When Robbie and Sheila had turned to face the crowd after saying their vows, his grin split his face in half. Sheila had looked radiant as joyful applause drowned out the music of the string quartet playing Pachelbel's Canon in D. The bride and groom made a handsome couple as they started arm in arm down the flagstone path. My mother-in-law's denim blue eyes and silver-white hair were offset by her periwinkle gown. The navy blue sling that kept her broken collarbone in place contrasted nicely with her dress. Robbie looked especially dashing in a newly designed navy blue uniform that signified his position as chief of police for the city of St. Louis. The newlyweds' expressions were priceless. I couldn't wait to create a wonderful wedding album for my mother-in-law, because that's what I do. My name is Kiki Lowenstein, and I'm a scrapbooker. It's my hobby, my passion, and soon it'll be my business, because I'm finalizing the arrangements to buy Time in a Bottle, a scrapbook store where I've been working since George died. As per our rehearsal instructions, my honey and I had to wait until the happy couple reached a halfway point on the flagstone path before we linked arms and stepped forward together. Next, Anya and Hodcho stepped off, with Gracie, our Harlequin Great Dane, trotting along between them. Around my dog's neck was a wreath of silk flowers, matching our bouquets of white Shasta daisies, pink Gerber daisies, sprigs of lavender, and pink roses. Given Gracie's natural black and white coloring, the effect was stunning. 2 by 2, the rest of the wedding party processed away from the chuppah, the ceremonial canopy that's a standard feature of Jewish weddings. As we moved past the seated guests and spilled onto Leighton's lawn, I caught a glimpse of my friend Cara Mia Delgado, who was catering the wedding banquet. Standing in the back in her simple black shift and pearls, she'd been waiting for this moment to set her staff into action. Yes, although her broken collarbone had confined her to a recliner, Sheila had polished every bit of the ceremony to a high gloss of perfection. From the handmade invitations I'd created and assembled to the wisteria and roses running up the poles of the chuppah, she'd taken care so that the colors, sounds, and fragrances would evoke a romantic ambiance. Everything was absolute perfection, and as a result, I was exhausted by Sheila's demands. Requests. That and the fact I was now 12 weeks pregnant. I had worked like a fiend to accommodate Sheila. Even clothing factory workers in Bangladesh were allotted more breaks than I had been.
"Looks like she pulled it off, sweetheart,"
whispered Detweiler. "Now you can relax and get back to running your scrapbook store." "Can you see the relief on my face?" I said quietly. I was holding my bouquet so that it partially covered my baby bump. I felt a tad embarrassed about my condition, but it was nothing I couldn't handle. Lately, I had started caring a lot less about other people's opinions. Instead, I concentrated on what I wanted out of life. A brush with death can cause a rearrangement of your priorities. Sheila and I had both nearly died in an event we now wryly called the shootout at the slough. But we'd foiled the bad guy and lived to tell about it. Today was truly a milestone to celebrate. 3. The gunfight at the slough hadn't been pretty, and I wasn't proud of what happened. But out of necessity, I'd killed our captor, my husband's former business partner. My choice had been to shoot him in the head or let him kill all of us. Sheila, me, my unborn baby, and Johnny Chambers, the brother of Mert Chambers, my former cleaning lady and best friend. My best friend. I still thought of Mert as my BFF, best friend forever, even though she still wasn't speaking to me. She blamed me for her brother's involvement in the mess. I had high hopes that when she learned the truth, she would come around. But Mert is a Scorpio, and once they decide they've been wronged, they want nothing to do with you. As yet another consequence of the melee, Sheila's injuries forced her to change the original date of her wedding. So this lovely event was special for many, many reasons. Not only to Sheila and Robbie, but to all of us. It was a triumph, considering what we'd endured. Leighton used the event as an excuse to add a creek and goldfish pond to our shared backyard. As his gift to the newlyweds, Leighton put up 2 white tents, one for the ceremony and one for the reception, so a sudden shower couldn't possibly ruin the day. That meant there were 3 tents, 2 large ones for the guests, and 1 small blue awning where Cara Mia's crew had set up coolers, bins, and containers. At Sheila's urging, Leighton had also installed a temporary flagstone path for the bridal party to take on our way to where a priest and rabbi waited to perform the ceremony. Yes, Sheila had thought of absolutely everything. And she wanted absolutely everything. And she expected and got absolutely everything. As my friend and coworker Clancy Whitehead said, "Nothing is impossible when you are willing to spend money hand over fist." Although Robbie never voiced a word of complaint, the staggering sums they'd spent on the wedding were a source of concern to him. I'd overheard him asking Sheila to be more cautious about spending. In response, she'd laughed and given him a kiss. The cost of their honeymoon cruise alone was absolutely staggering. At least, to me it was. Once the ceremony had started, Cara Mia's waitstaff had migrated to the back of the tent to watch. Word had spread that our entourage included a real live flower dog the size of a small pony, so the servers wanted to see my Great Dane. Gracie charmed the socks off of everyone by walking along slowly between Anya and Hodcho, wearing her collar of flowers and wagging her long black tail. Now these same servers raced back to the catering tent. Appetizers, champagne, soft drinks, and sparkling white grape juice would mark the start of a wonderful repast. I'd seen the menu, and I knew that Cara wouldn't disappoint. The tables were decorated with tulle, tiny hearts and doves punched out of paper, and lavish floral arrangements. Guests searched for their tables with their decorated name cards. Not a cloud marred the celestial blue sky. Birdsong mingled with the Bach played by a string quartet. The sweet smell of petunias and roses scented the air. Sheila's bell-like laughter and Robbie's booming bass rose over the appreciative murmurs of the crowd. All in all, this was a wedding to die for. 4. As per the bride's prior instructions, Detweiler, Anya, Gracie, and I headed to the fish pond for formal portraits by Vincent, the photographer. But I didn't go there directly. I stopped by my own house to use the bathroom, drop off Gracie, and grab my purse with my camera. By the time I arrived at the fish pond, Anya was posed, sitting on the edge of the goldfish pond and dangling her fingers in the water. The koi bubbled up to the surface eagerly, hoping to be fed. "Watch out, Anya," warned Detweiler. "You're liable to lose a finger." In response, she flicked water at the long, lean cop. Their playful relationship brought a smile to my face. Soon we would be a real family. We would be united by our marriage, as well as by the addition of our baby and Detweiler's son, Eric, a child by his first wife, Gina. What a wonderful blended family we were going to have. "Gents, ladies, group photo, please." Vincent herded us together. Sheila and Robbie joined us. "I hope you hurry with those pictures," said Milton. "My stomach is rumbling and that food smells delicious. If we don't get over there soon, I bet it will be all gone." "Not likely," said Robbie, clapping a hand on his officer's shoulder. "Unless we're joined by the Russian army." That brought a big laugh. Sheila had ordered enough food to feed the hungry hordes on a 30-day march. Kara had kindly squeezed Sheila into her catering schedule at the last minute and cheerfully put up with my mother-in-law's ever-changing demands. "If I were you, I would have shoved a plate of meatballs in her face by now," I told Kara after Sheila had made yet another change to the menu. "It isn't personal," said Kara. "Sheila can't keep changing the menu forever. Sooner or later, we'll be right back where we started. You're a fine one to talk about dealing with her. She keeps adding to the guest list, so you have to keep making more handmade invitations, envelopes, place cards, and so on. Your poor hand is swollen from hitting those punches over and over." "Too true. I've been soaking it in ice water at night. But there's a light on the horizon. She can't keep inviting people. She's bound to run out of friends sooner or later," I said. Knowing Sheila, it'll be sooner rather than later. In fact, I suspect she's bribing strangers with the prospect of an open bar and the promise of your food. "In less than 2 hours, this will all be over," Kara had whispered to me when she and her catering crew had pulled up next to Leighton's house so they could unload. Vincent's photo van was parked nearby. "Your mother-in-law will be on a cruise, and we won't hear from her for an entire 30 days. It would be good for Sheila and Robbie to get away for a while, especially to a place where cell phone coverage would be iffy. I watched as he slipped a proprietary arm around Sheila's waist. They'd fallen in love in high school, married other people, and found each other all over again. Really romantic. "Hey, gorgeous." Detweiler came up behind me and kissed me on the neck. My knees went a bit wobbly at his touch and the scent of his cologne. "No PDA," sniffed Anya. "That means no public displays of affection. You two need to get a room." "Maybe we will," said Detweiler. "You can go on home and babysit Gracie." A scream split the dense summer air. 5. Detweiler and Hodjo took off running. Usually I would tag along, but the heat was really doing a number on me. Besides, the yelp probably came from someone who'd spotted a garter snake or a big bug, common uninvited guests at an out-of-doors function. Instead of chasing after the boys, I grabbed a folding chair and took a load off my feet. Robbie took 2 steps in the same direction as Detweiler and Hodjo before Sheila hauled him right back with a curt, "Oh, no, you don't, Buster." Vincent glanced around nervously. I couldn't blame him. A scream like that will put anyone's nerves on edge. "Could I have the bride and groom again?" Vincent recovered quickly and gestured to the couple. Sheila had hired Vincent because he was the brother of a friend, but what really cinched the deal was the fact that his photos were always picked up by a local society magazine. While I sat off to one side, the bridesmaids chatted with each other. They'd been cordial enough to me, but since they hadn't seen each other in ages, they had a lot of catching up to do, so they mainly talked to each other. "Wait," said Toby, a statuesque brunette who favored really big false eyelashes. "Where's Esther?" "I think she ran to the ladies' room," said Leah, nodding her head toward Leighton's house. Leah was slightly plump with a ruddy complexion. Almost on cue, Esther came walking along on my landlord's arm. Leighton's salt-and-pepper gray head bent close to her sunny blonde hair as they conversed. He's a slender, classy-looking man, and Esther, an aerobics instructor for seniors, looked perfectly at ease on his arm. Once the couple came closer, the other bridesmaids clustered around them. The women all began talking at once, complimenting Leighton on his flowers. I could see my landlord pinking up with pleasure. His home was his palace. As an author who traveled the world, he tended this little patch of land with great reverence, as it was his touchstone. This acre-and-a-half lot provided him with a great deal of happiness, particularly after Anya and I moved into the garage he'd converted into a small cottage. He often said that he considered us his family. That seemed pretty sad to me, because Leighton had a daughter somewhere, but they were estranged.
"Ladies, a few more pictures, please."
Vincent took a few more quick shots of the bridesmaids, all women who were aging gracefully.
"Marvelous, ladies. That's a wrap for the formal shots. I'm going to break all this down and then wander around at the reception."
The bridesmaids and Leighton gathered around Sheila and her husband, talking happily about how well the ceremony had gone. Anya joined them. I couldn't haul myself out of my chair. Instead, I glanced over my shoulder, wondering why Detweiler and Hodcho hadn't returned. Sheila noticed, too. She lifted an eyebrow at me, and I shrugged. The guys were taking their time, but I figured they'd run into well-wishers or other friends from the police department. I had struggled to my feet and was considering hunting the guys down when a familiar voice stopped me.
"Yoo-hoo! There's that photographer!
Oh, Vincent!" called my mother as she trotted toward us, her large handbag flopping at her side. In her pink polyester blouse and skirt, she looked her best, and I made a mental note to thank my sister Amanda for overseeing Mom's wardrobe. When Mom angled closer, I spotted a small flesh-colored bandage on her temple where Mom had had a precancerous growth removed. Since my plate was full, Amanda did an amazing job taking care of our mother.
"I know you'll want to take my photo. Remember, at the senior center, you commented on how photogenic I am?"
Mom tossed her purse to the ground and posed with one leg cocked suggestively. Grabbing her skirt in her hand, she managed to show an awful lot of leg.
"Sorry,"
mouthed Amanda as she brought up the rear. I shrugged a "what can you do" at her. My mother doesn't understand that she can't always be the center of attention. Vincent, bless his heart, either took the photos of Mom or pretended to do so. He offered a bit of direction, suggesting that my mother show off her good side, the one without the bandage.
"Now I want one with my lovely daughter," said Mom.
As I started toward my mother, she gestured wildly to Amanda, who rolled her eyes at me. I did feel a smidgen of satisfaction, however, when Mom clutched Amanda and crowed, "Everyone thinks we're sisters." Amanda looked horrified. I certainly hoped Vincent had caught that expression for posterity. As a scrapbook professional, I should have suggested a real family portrait, but frankly, the urge to upchuck overwhelmed my feelings of familial affection. Could be morning sickness or Mom's sickness, either one. I was betting the latter. As Vincent finished, Mom waved wildly again.
"Yoo-hoo! Penny! Over here so we can take your picture!"
I gasped as Morticia Adams walked toward us. My Aunt Penny wore that iconic black gown, complete with gauzy trailing sleeves and ribbons crisscrossed under the bust. Fortunately, Sheila and her friends were so busy talking to well-wishers that none of them noticed the wedding had become a Halloween party.
"What on earth are you wearing?"
I grabbed Aunt Penny by the arm. My goal was to get her out of Sheila's line of sight before the bride threw a wonky, as the Brits say.
"Sorry, Kiki,"
said Amanda.
"I was so busy helping Mom that I didn't check on Penny until it was too late."
"Like it?" asked my aunt, spreading the gauzy black skirt. Okay, she's not a blood relative. She's my mother's best friend, and we've adopted her because she's the nearest thing to a real relative we have.
Where? Why?
I stuttered. Remember? Those guards at the Mexican border confiscated my luggage? That happened because you were packing heat, added Amanda. What were you thinking? You can't carry guns in and out of the country. It slipped my mind. That gun was just a little bitty thing I picked up in a shop, but they made a huge fuss about it. Took everything. All my dang clothes were in that suitcase. Lucky for me, I found myself a Halloween shop going out of business. She dresses with her eyes closed, muttered Amanda. Not too picky about the fit, either, I added. Family photo? Called Vincent. My sister grabbed me by one arm and Morticia by the other and dragged us over by Mom. Is this your family, Kiki? Asked Vincent as he fussed with a setting. Yes, Mom, sister, and aunt. Could you hurry that shot? I'd rather Sheila not see us. 2 seconds later, Vincent said, All done. Amanda started herding cats, that is, moving my mother and aunt to the reception tent. They were 10 feet away when Vincent called, You forgot your purse, to my mother. Amanda race-walked back and thanked Vincent. Mom's always misplacing this. She waved Toodles with her fingers toward me and caught up with Aunt Penny and Mom. That's a wrap for the posed shots, said Vincent, to no one in particular. Sheila was chatting with Sharon DePrima, a pretty woman with hazel eyes hidden behind glasses. Sharon was bubbly and warm, always ready with a hug and a big laugh that instantly made Sheila want to befriend her when they met at a silent auction fundraiser. Robbie had been standing by and listening in when he withdrew his phone from his pocket. His relaxed posture changed, and he started swearing under his breath. Sheila noticed, too. He tilted the screen of his phone so she could read it. Her hand flew over her mouth. No, no, no. Anya? Robbie reached around 2 bridesmaids to tap my daughter on the shoulder. Could you escort your grandmother over to the head table for me? I have an errand to run. I'll be right back. Sheila didn't want to let him go. Even as Anya took her grandmother's arm, Sheila kept her grip on Robbie. Can't someone else handle this? Just let me check into it. Probably the unfortunate result of the heat and humidity, but better safe than sorry, he said before he headed in the direction of the scream. 6. We were halfway to the reception tent when Sheila crooked her finger at me and whispered, Kiki, would you go check on what's happening and report back to me? Sure. I grabbed my purse and started in the direction that Robbie had taken. With every step, my kitten heels punctured the turf and threatened my balance. After a few wobbly steps, I slipped off the shoes. The grass blades felt cool and delightful between my toes. I made a semicircle from the fish pond in the back all the way around to the front quadrant of Leighton's huge Victorian house. I was almost within sight of the catering tent when sirens whoop, whoop, whooped in the distance. Uh-oh. I picked up my pace and caught sight of Detweiler. He hurried toward me and folded me into his arms. You don't need to see this. He blocked the view of the area between the blue tent and Leighton's house. I love it when you act all manly, I said. It makes me feel so cherished. Ever since I've become pregnant, he's very protective. You are cherished. He stared down at me with those amazing Heineken bottle green eyes. But I'm also curious, I said as I leaned to one side to see what was going on. An ambulance pulled into Leighton's circular drive, and a crew of EMTs hopped out with some of their equipment. Right behind it was a police cruiser with its red lights strobing. An unmarked cop car pulled up next to the cruiser. A policewoman jumped out with a roll of yellow crime scene tape. Yes, you are that too, he agreed. Despite Detweiler's strong arms, I pulled away to stare. Hodjo was writing in a steno pad. Where he'd found one, I couldn't guess. He appeared to be interviewing one of Kara's servers, a young woman, mopping her eyes and trembling. "Someone trip and fall?" I asked. "It's a bit more serious than that. One of the catering staff members found a dead guy, face down in the grass with a punch."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?